What happens when a man disappears, and powerful politicians suddenly stop talking? What happens when police hesitate, the media backs off, and criminals have nothing to fear? What happens when the entire system, law, leadership, justice, doesn't fail loudly, but goes completely silent? This is not the story of an ordinary disappearance. This is the story of a truth so dangerous that exposing it could tear reputations apart. Because when secrets reach too high, they don't arrest people, they erase them. So the question is, who was so dangerous that his absence protected everyone else? If you enjoy real unsolved mysteries, stories that expose power, corruption, and silence, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment below. Truth matters. Now, let the story begin. The year was 1930. America was sinking into the Great Depression. New York was a city where politics, crime, and justice quietly overlapped. In this environment, one man vanished. No struggle, no screams, no body, just nothing. At first, no one panicked, because powerful men don't usually disappear. They are removed. If a disappearance doesn't trigger alarm, was it ever meant to be investigated? The last confirmed sighting, on a warm summer evening, he was seen walking through Manhattan, calm, alone, unafraid. He stepped into a taxi. The driver later said nothing seemed unusual. No rush, no nervousness, no final call. The taxi stopped. He got out. That was the last confirmed moment of his existence. Can a man simply vanish in the most crowded city in America? A wait that turned into fear. That night, someone waited for him. Hours passed. Midnight came. Morning arrived. He never returned. Still, the reaction was slow. Police suggested possibilities. He may return. He may be resting. Adults disappear sometimes. But something felt wrong. No urgent search. No citywide alert. No pressure from above. Why would authorities delay when time mattered most? When his residence was examined, everything appeared normal, but not complete. Some personal documents were missing. Important papers were gone. The amount of cash he carried was unclear. There were no signs of violence. No theft. No forced entry. It looked like a planned departure. But planned by whom? Question. Was this an escape, or was someone helping him disappear? Media noise, then sudden silence. Newspapers initially exploded with headlines. Speculation grew. The public demanded answers. Then, unexpectedly, coverage slowed. Stories were shortened. Questions disappeared. Editors changed priorities. Some journalists were reassigned. Others stopped asking altogether. Why would a story this explosive suddenly become untouchable? As days passed, one thing became clear. This was no ordinary missing person case. It was a test of the system that claimed to uphold justice. And the system did not rush to pass that test. Or worse, it chose not to. Because once the investigation officially began, the truth would start pointing upward. The morning after he failed to return, concern finally turned into action. But not urgency. Not panic. Just procedure. Delayed missing report. Here's a critical detail many stories rush past. A missing person report was not filed immediately. Authorities treated the disappearance casually at first. The assumption was simple. A grown man, wealthy, influential, had likely gone away on his own. Days passed. Only after continued absence did the case officially enter police records. Why would time, the most important factor in disappearances, be wasted so easily? Police searched his apartment thoroughly. What they found was unsettling, not because of chaos, but because of order. Clothes neatly arranged. No signs of struggle. No forced entry. No blood. No weapon. But several personal and legal documents were missing. Not everything. Just specific papers. This mattered. Because random disappearance leaves chaos. Planned disappearance leaves gaps. Who decides which parts of a life are taken and which are left behind? Investigators checked his finances. Another overlooked detail: he had withdrawn a significant amount of cash shortly before disappearing. Not all his money, not enough to raise immediate alarm, just enough to survive for some time. No large transfers. No emptied accounts, which ruled out panic, but suggested calculated intent. If he planned to vanish forever, why leave most of his money behind? Hospitals, jails, and morgues. Police followed standard procedure. Hospitals checked. Jails checked. Morgues checked. Nothing. No unidentified patient. No injured man. No John Doe body. This was important because it eliminated accidents and sudden medical emergencies. If he didn't collapse and wasn't arrested, where did he go? The taxi driver's statement. The taxi driver was questioned multiple times. His statement never changed. The passenger appeared calm, gave a normal destination, paid the fare, walked away. No argument, no suspicious behavior. But here's the problem. The destination area was crowded, busy, public, a terrible place to disappear. Unless disappearing was already arranged. Was the taxi ride the beginning of an escape or the end of a life? As police progress stalled, the media pushed harder. Reporters demanded updates. Editorials questioned police competence. Then something strange happened. Officials stopped giving clear answers. Statements became vague. Press briefings shortened. Questions redirected. The case wasn't closed, but it was no longer welcome. Who benefits when investigators stop explaining themselves? In a city like New York, someone always sees something. Yet, no confirmed sightings after the taxi. No credible tips. No solid leads. Thousands walked those streets daily. And yet, no one saw him again. Is it possible that witnesses existed but were never encouraged to speak? Weeks turned into months. Leads dried up. Public attention weakened. Police activity slowed further. The case wasn't officially abandoned. It was allowed to fade. And that detail matters, because investigations don't always end. Sometimes they're simply starved. Was this negligence or quiet instruction? By the end of this phase, investigators had learned one thing for sure. There was no accident. There was no impulsive act. And there was no obvious crime scene, which left only uncomfortable possibilities. Someone had planned this carefully, or someone had helped ensure no answers would ever surface. And that's when attention turned away from paperwork and toward his personal life. Because disappearances don't exist in isolation. They leave shadows behind. By the time police accepted that this disappearance was not accidental, they faced an uncomfortable truth. The answers were not on the streets. They were in his personal life, and that's where the case began to fracture. On paper, his marriage appeared respectable. There were no public scandals, no divorce filings, no domestic violence reports, but investigators quickly learned something important. The relationship was emotionally distant. They lived together, but not closely. Schedules didn't align. Private lives stayed private. This mattered because people who vanish often leave emotional clues behind. But here, there were none. Can someone disappear without emotional warning signs? Or were those signs simply ignored? The Women WHO changed the case. Then came the detail that could not be ignored. He was known to have relationships outside his marriage. Not rumors. Not gossip. Confirmed. One name surfaced repeatedly. Sally Lou Ritz. She was a former model and dancer. Young. Well known in social circles. Investigators questioned her extensively. At first, she cooperated. Then her story began to shift. Timelines changed. Meetings became unclear. Details were suddenly forgotten. And eventually, she refused to speak further. Why would a witness stop cooperating unless silence protected someone? Police attempted to reconstruct his final days. That's when contradictions exploded. Different people gave different last-seen times. Meetings were confirmed, then denied. Some witnesses claimed phone calls that couldn't be verified. No two timelines matched perfectly. And that was alarming, because memory doesn't distort that much, unless pressure exists. Were these contradictions natural confusion or fear-driven silence? Phone calls that led nowhere. Investigators examined phone records. Several calls had been made shortly before his disappearance. Some were explained. Others weren't. A few numbers belonged to people who refused interviews. Some calls had no recorded follow-ups. In one case, a call was acknowledged, but the content was never disclosed. What kind of conversation makes people refuse to repeat it? Police psychologists were consulted. They asked one core question: was he the type to run? The answer was unclear. He had status, influence, career security, but also enemies, knowledge of secrets, pressure from powerful figures. He didn't fit the profile of a desperate fugitive, nor did he fit the profile of a suicidal man. If he didn't want to die and didn't want to run, what option was left? Investigation stalls again. As personal angles grew complicated, the investigation slowed once more. Why? Because every new lead pointed toward people with influence. Questioning became cautious. Requests were delayed. Some interviews were never scheduled. The case was still open, but only on paper. Can an investigation continue honestly when every answer threatens powerful reputations? Months passed. Memories faded. Witnesses moved on. Public interest weakened, and time did what no suspect could. It buried urgency. What remained was speculation, and speculation doesn't lead to arrests. By now, investigators understood one thing clearly. This disappearance was not random, and it was not simple. Every personal connection raised more questions than answers. Every contradiction deepened suspicion, and soon, attention shifted again, away from relationships and toward something far more dangerous: power, influence, and corruption, because some disappearances aren't caused by love or fear. They're caused by what someone knows. By this stage, investigators had exhausted personal explanations. Affairs didn't explain the silence. Money didn't explain the hesitation. Fear alone didn't explain the system slowing down. So attention shifted upward, toward power. New York in 1930 was not clean. Politics, organized crime, and the justice system were deeply intertwined. Judges were not just legal figures, they were political assets. Gambling operations, bribery networks, and protection rackets thrived quietly. Everyone in power knew something, and everyone knew who not to expose. What happens when someone inside the system knows too much? Investigators began asking an uncomfortable question. Did he possess information that could destroy careers? He had access to sensitive legal cases, private testimonies, backroom negotiations. And in that era, justice was often negotiated, not enforced. If such knowledge were made public, it wouldn't damage one person. It would damage many. Would silencing one man be easier than letting the truth surface? Rumors of organized crime involvement surfaced. Not officially. Quietly. Certain figures known to law enforcement were never questioned. Some names were mentioned and then erased from reports. No arrests were made. No suspects named. But investigators privately admitted something chilling. This did not look like a crime of passion. It looked like professional erasure. If the mob was involved, why was there no trace of violence? Why the investigation lost momentum? Here's a crucial point many stories ignore. The investigation did not fail suddenly. It was gradually weakened. Funding was reduced. Assigned officers were reassigned. Leads required approval that never came. No official order ended the case. It simply stopped moving. Who has the authority to slow an investigation without closing it? New York was expanding rapidly. Buildings were rising everywhere. Foundations were being poured daily. Investigators quietly considered something disturbing. If a body needed to disappear permanently, this was the perfect moment in history. No forensic technology. No digital records. No accountability. But again, no evidence was ever found. Is the absence of evidence proof of innocence or proof of perfection? The case becomes a joke. As years passed, something strange happened. The disappearance entered public culture. The phrase, "to pull a crater," became slang for vanishing without explanation. That mattered. because jokes neutralize fear. And fear keeps investigations alive. Was humor the final step in burying the truth? By the late 1930s, the case existed in name only. Files remained open. Questions remained unanswered. But no one was pushing anymore. And when a mystery survives long enough, the system finds a way to label it. Not unsolved, but finished, because the next step was inevitable. A legal declaration, one that would officially close the door, even if the truth never came out. By the late 1930s, the disappearance was no longer an active investigation. It was a burden. Files existed, reports remained, but effort was gone. And then, in 1940, the state made its move. After nearly 10 years with no evidence, no body, and no answers, the courts officially declared him legally dead. This mattered more than it seemed, because once a person is legally dead, investigations lose urgency, records stop updating, questions lose legal power. The case wasn't solved. It was closed by time. Is declaring someone dead the same as discovering the truth? Even after the declaration, several things remained missing forever. No confirmed body, no verified sighting, no death certificate cause, no confession, no reliable witness, not from criminals, not from police, not from politicians. In most historic cases, something eventually leaks. Here, nothing did. How does a mystery this large leave behind absolute silence? The three strongest theories. After decades of analysis, historians agree the truth likely fits one of three possibilities: murder, quiet and professional. This theory suggests he was killed deliberately, not violently, not publicly, removed by people who understood how to erase evidence. No body was found, because none was meant to be. This explains the silence, the lack of witnesses, the investigation slowdown. But it raises one problem. Why was there never even a single mistake? Escape, planned and assisted. Some believe he chose to vanish, that he feared exposure, scandal, or retaliation. He withdrew cash, left selectively, disappeared without panic. But this theory struggles too. He left behind power, status, and security, and never contacted anyone again. Not once. Would a man escape forever and never be seen, heard, or exposed? Erasure. The system protected itself. This is the most unsettling theory, that he wasn't killed by criminals and didn't flee alone, that powerful people decided the truth was too dangerous, and instead of solving the problem, they removed it. No trial, no arrest, no explanation, just silence. This theory explains media withdrawal, police hesitation, political distance, historical amnesia. If the system can erase one man, how many others were erased too? This case isn't remembered because it's mysterious. It's remembered because it's clean. Too clean. No chaos. No closure. No accountability. Just a man who stepped out of a taxi and out of history. And the world accepted it. So ask yourself this: if the truth never surfaced, if no one was punished, if silence protected everyone involved, was this disappearance ever meant to be solved? Or was the real mystery not where he went, but why no one was allowed to look for him?